So it's Donna, back with you from Olean, New York in America with Smokin'Licious, and we're going to give you a special treat today as we enter our new year of 2022. So whether you're doing for Valentine's Day this year, Sweetest Day, an anniversary, or just want to give somebody a special treat, this is a perfect dessert, and it will feature a couple of smoked items. So I'm going to be featuring a puff pastry version of our Hearts of Pleasure, and I'll be using some cookie cutters and some smoked chocolate and smoked nuts. So we're going to meet this time in our special kitchen where I'm going to teach you a new technique that we use when we're doing something that's fragile like chocolate in a smoking technique. So get ready, I think you're going to like this one. Okay, for our Hearts of Pleasure, you're going to need a few ingredients, and a lot of these are going to be a choice that you can make of your own. I'm just going to give you some suggestions of what I have liked to use in my puffs. So without question, you have to have puff pastry. Now, you can make this yourself. I will tell you that the days of me making mine are long gone because I just don't have the time anymore. But that is a tradition that we have done in the past. And if you'd like, you can do a puff pastry from scratch, or there are available now puff pastry sheets, which are very convenient. You'll just need to follow the directions for thawing them out ahead of time, and then they will be fully already sheeted and to the perfect depth, thickness to make your puffs. In addition, you'll have to make some decisions about what you want to stuff your puffs with. My favorite things are to use some type of nut, and I like almonds, and I prefer to get almonds that are already slivered so that I can just chop these up a little bit, make them finer to go into my puffs. I also like to use coconut, a shredded coconut, and I prefer one that is unsweetened because these are already a very sweet treat. And then I like to use chocolates, and a good quality chocolate. And I prefer dark chocolate, but I have a lot of people that like milk chocolate. Some, very few, that like white, so I'm electing not to use white today, but know that you can do that. You can also use chocolates that are more specialty chocolates that might have mint in them or small pieces of nut. That is your choice. They can be baking bars, or they can be the type that you just buy in a grocery store that is just for snacking or as a special treat. So any chocolate bars can be used in this recipe. And then you can make a decision if you'd like to make any hearts of puffs with any kind of jelly or jams. So I do prefer to use natural if I do a jelly. Today I believe I'm going to probably make just one puff as an example with a jelly, but we prefer ours with just straight chocolate, nuts, and coconut. And then you'll need an egg that's going to be for our egg wash when we go to seal our hearts. Now know that the number of hearts will depend on the cookie cutter sizes that you pick. So today mine are standard cookie cutters, which are about 2 inches or so in diameter, but I have used ones that are 3 to 4 inches, which are great because if you're going to make a special treat for a couple, say for an anniversary or for Sweetest Day or Valentine's Day treat, then the larger ones are really nice because you can share that treat and make it even more special. But otherwise, for individual ones, the smaller cookie cutters work just fine. And as you can see, I have one with straight edges and one with a serrated edge that'll give it more of a decorative. So those are also something that you'll have to get handy. Now you can use any cookie cutters you want. So know that this recipe also works well for other holidays. If you'd like to make it at Christmas time, then think about all of those nice Christmas cookie cutters. If you'd like to make it at Easter time, again, eggs, rabbits, baskets, those all work nicely as well. Anything will do, so make sure you use your imagination. Once our puffs are completed, you'll also need a sheet pan, and I prefer to have it lined with a sheet of parchment paper. This will make the puff pastry ideal for how it bakes up, and so that it doesn't get an extra brown bottom on it. The parchment helps to keep it from getting too brown on the base. And then once we're finished, if you like your puffs to be frosted or have a little bit of decoration to them, then just know you're also going to need some baker's sugar, or what's known as confectionery or powdered sugar, and you'll need some pure vanilla extract. Please don't use imitation, make sure it's pure. Some food colorings, and I like to use gel food colorings, but the standard liquid ones are fine. And then a liquid. You can either elect to use milk, You can use a cream, and some people even like to use just water, just some kind of liquid that can be added to our frosting. So these are the ingredients. The first thing we're going to get ready to do is just get some of our coconut toasted. Then we're going to take our nuts and our chocolate, and those are going to be my items that are smoked today. Now I'm going to give you a special treat with a technique that we use in the cold smoking fashion, but I will also remind you of the way you can do it at home in your own kitchen. So we'll be joining up in the cooking part of this next. Okay, so we're back now ready to do our smoking technique to our nuts and our chocolate. And as you'll see, I have something totally different than I've used before. So let me just give a little explanation. This is what's called a handheld food smoker, and this is one brand that was one of the starts in America of the whole range of handheld food smokers. The company PolyScience actually started this as just kind of a side venture here in America. And they developed a very easy way to introduce a smoke vapor using a cold technique. So that means there's really no heat per se, unlike when we do our traditional braai. We use a hot unit and we produce a hot smoke vapor. Well, we are going to do a combustion, but this is in a cold environment. So we aren't going to be actually heating up any of our food items. We're just introducing it to smoke vapor. So I've taken our 2 chocolates, milk and dark, and our nuts of choice for our puff pastries, and I've put them into resealable plastic bags. This is key because you need something to trap the vapor in for us to introduce the flavor essence of the wood. Now this unit operates on batteries. It has a long hose connection. This is where we're going to be sticking the smoke vapor extraction into our bags. And then it uses a very small wood chip, what we call a microchip. And it just takes a little pinch to produce a lot of vapor. So that's added to what we call this little bowl. It's a removable bowl on this unit, and some units that you might find on handheld food smokers, it's attached and you won't be able to remove it. So, use your discretion. I like this Breville PolyScience handheld food smoker because it has its own stand. I don't have to mess around with anything. It's easy for me to be manipulating in the kitchen and not have to worry about trying to hold the unit and position it correctly to get my smoke vapor. Now it has a dial on the back, and that dial will activate the batteries to turn the unit on. It produces a little fan inside because if you remember anything about your combustion science, you must have a heat source, you must have an oxygen source in order to keep a vapor producing. So our heat source is going to be our wood chips. We're going to be using just a traditional lighter to ignite it. We turn on the unit first before we light it. And then you have one of your bags ready to go to insert the tubing into. So I have sealed my bag almost completely up, leaving just a small corner. I'm going to take the end of my hose and I'm going to insert it inside the bag. Once I get this lit, you're going to see it fill with the smoke vapor. I'll be pulling my unit tubing and then I'll be going quickly to another bag. So while that one's filled with smoke vapor, I will be introducing while I've got the unit going. So you don't need to keep the vent. You will see me turn that off partway through because once I have an ignition on my wood chips, it will keep generating the smoke vapor. So let's give you a little sample. Turning on the unit first, you will hear the fan. Now I'm going to just light my microchips. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. There goes my smoke vapor. You can see how quickly it fills. We take out our tubing, quickly introduce it into the next bag. Fill that one. And if you need more product, you can simply add it to your embers. Reignite it, and that will start the rate of smoke. Same thing, release, and into our next bag. Shutting my unit off. Look how easy there it is. My smoke vapor is trapped in the bags. I can leave it for the amount of time that I want for the infusion. That's all there is to it. But for those of you that cannot find a handheld food smoker, you can feel free to use our previously mentioned DIY stovetop smoker unit using just a standard kitchen stock pot. So be sure to check out the link that we provided so that you can use that if you're unable to locate a handheld food smoker. So now that we have our items smoked, we're going to let those infuse. Then we're going to get our puff pastries and start assembling our treats. So before we get into the smoking part of our recipe, let's get into how we do our puff pastry. So as I've mentioned, I've selected 2 heart cookie cutters that I'll be using to make my heart puffs. And I have one with a serrated edge and one with a straight. And what you want to do is try to start figuring out how many hearts you're going to be able to get, or how many cookie cuttings you'll get out of each of the sheets of puff pastry, because you need a bottom and you need a top. So make sure you don't cut too many of one that's not going to fit with another. So always make sure they're done in pairs. So I'm going to start with my serrated first, and I've just laid out my thawed puff pastry, and I'll just start to make my heart cuttings. And you'll just want to get them as close as you can to each other so that there's little waste. You can roll up the puff pastry that's left over and cut again. That's totally up to you. Sometimes what I like to do is just take all of my extras and actually just kind of make a little cinnamon treat with some sugar and cinnamon. So totally up to you. So I have 4 of my serrated, so that means I have 2 puffs that I'll be able to do. I'm going to now make some straights. And there's 4 of that. I'm going to see if I can squeak out just one more set. And this is where your scraps may have to come in handy. So I will be taking my scraps, and then I can squeak out another one out of those. Then I have 1 more sheet of puff pastry that I can do some additional puffs. So once you have them all cut out, you can just move them with a small spatula to your parchment lined sheet pan, and then this will be ready for the oven once we've stuffed them. Now, no, puff pastry is one of those doughs that needs to stay cold. So once you get done with this part while you're doing the smoking, your cookie sheet should go in the refrigerator to keep the dough nice and cold. So we'll be back and we'll be starting to do our smoked ingredients. Okay, so we're back with all of our ingredients that have now been smoked. As you'll remember, they were put into our plastic bags, and you can see where they're all well smoked. So now it's time to assemble, and this is where your creativity can come into play. So taking one of your cutout pastry hearts, you can decide the ingredients you'd like to add. So I'm going to make kind of a combination here for my first one. I'm going to put some toasted coconut that I just toasted in a 375 degree Fahrenheit oven. I'm laying that as my base. I'm taking one of my smoked chocolate pieces and I'm just laying that into my heart. And then I'm just going to sprinkle a few of my smoked almonds on the top of the chocolate. And once the chocolate goes in the oven, that will melt into our heart. So I take a topper, the same heart, remember, if you're using different cutters, make sure that you match them up as best as you can. And let's not be too concerned if you have a little bit of space opening. These are wonderful even if they mush out a bit. Once you get them kind of sealed up, what you're going to do is just take the tines of a fork and you're just going to kind of press like you would do with a hand pie. And you just want to get some level of sealant to the 2 layers of dough. And that'll also put a little decorative technique to it as well. So once it's all sealed up, it'll need an egg wash. So just take a brush and just put an egg wash all over the top. An egg wash is just what it is, egg that you've beat up. Some people add a little water. I do not. That is not my technique. My technique is to just use it straight. And this is what gives that golden hue to your finished pastry. And then just shift that to your parchment lined sheet pan. So let's do another one. This time we're going to use one of our straight cutters. And you'll have to manipulate your chocolate based on the size of your hearts. Some larger ones will obviously take a full piece of chocolate. And this one I'm just going to do with nuts and chocolate, placing my top again, taking the tines of my fork, sealing my 2 layers of dough. And then we egg wash our heart. And I'm going to do one more for you, and this is going to be with a little bit of our jelly. And again, as I've mentioned, it's a sweet treat already, so I prefer to usually use, if I can have my homemade jelly, I like my homemade. If I can't, then I try to store-buy something that does not have any added sugar. So again, our base heart. And for this one, I'm going to use chocolate as well. And it just takes a little bit. And you don't have to heat up your preserve because the heat in the oven is going to take care of it kind of melting throughout your pastry. And I always find those little juicy bits that come out just make it even better. Okay, and an egg wash again. And you can at this stage, if you prefer to do a little bit of sprinkles on the outside, you're welcome to do that. The judgment call is if you plan to frost. If you plan to frost them with any kind of royal icing or a tad of buttercream, then you might want to reserve your sprinkles for when you add that component. So there's an example of some of the stuffings. Again, let your imagination wander. You don't have to stay sweet either. You can go savory, but we will be finishing up our hearts and then getting them ready to go into our 375-degree Fahrenheit oven, and they'll take just about 15 minutes. So our heart puffs are complete. They have puffed up in the oven and they're ready to go. So while they're cooling, we're going to make our frosting. I've elected that I just want to do a slight drizzle over my puffs. So these are, again, decisions you need to make. But I've loaded up just under a cup of our confectionery sugar, and I put it into a kind of like a measuring cup because I want to be able to split my frosting into 3 parts. I'm planning on doing this as a Valentine's Day treat, so I'd like to have some white, some pink, and some red. That means I'm just going to use my red gel food coloring, because if I just use a little dab, it'll make a pink color, and if I put a little bit more, it'll make it a little bit darker. But you can use lavender, purple, anything that you'd like. So I like to make my frosting a little bit sweet. So I am going to just add a little bit of cream to start. And I'm also adding a little bit of pure vanilla extract. And this is going to be enough for my entire batch of frosting. And we just want a hint of vanilla. And remember, extract is a little bit on the stronger side, so start small. So I will start to whisk that together. And remember, with confection sugar, it has a lot of air to it. So you need to start with just a small quantity of liquid. I'm trying to reach the point where I have just a little bit of drip. I don't want a lot. I just want a bit with a spoon because that's my application today. So once I see it start to accumulate on my whisk, I know I'm just approaching the point where there's no return. If you go too far, you'd have to add more sugar and kind of start your blend again. So now I'm at a thick consistency. This would be spreadable. And I'm going to continue to add my cream. Now remember, cream, when you use it, especially a heavy cream, will add a thickening quality to it. It's kind of the reason I like it, just because I can get a little bit more control. Now I am going to use a spoon today, but know that little small plastic condiment style bottles work really well for relieving your icing. It's kind of a trick to be able to get very clean application to whatever you're baking. So I'm trying to make sure that I have no large clumps, that it's smooth. You must do this step first before you start adding any coloring, because we don't want to add color until right at the end when we're ready. So as you can see, it's a slow drip now. I want it just a little bit thinner. So I'm probably up to 3/4 of a tablespoon right now for liquid. And because I'm just got a small batch of hearts, I don't need a lot of frosting. So do you see that nice dribble? That's about my consistency that I like. Okay, and that will puddle off my spoon just right. So now I'm going to take what I want for my white out first. And I only need a little bit because I only have a small batch of hearts. So I'll take about 1/3. Set that aside. And now I'm just going to add one little bit of my red food coloring. And this will become my pink. And then same thing, once you get it to the color that you like, I'm just going to take a little bit, and that's going to be my second color. Now, if I wanted to go in the purple hue, I could add my purple now, or if I want to stay with my red, I'll just add more red. So I'm just going to take my little stick, add a bit more, and gel food colorings are very intense. So I've got a light pink, a darker red hued pink, and again, if you want even a little bit more intensity, just a slab bit more. And that looks really good to me. So those are going to be our 3 colors that we're going to do for our decorating. So next we'll bring in our puff pastries, get them coated, and we'll be ready to taste them. So here's our finished puffs. They've cooled out of the oven, and as you can see, they're just perfect. You just want them to be golden all the way around. The parchment will help the bottoms not get too overcooked, and you certainly can tell which ones have the jelly in them. Now, just to put a little finish on them, what I like to do is just put a spoonful of my royal icing that I've done with a cream base, and I just like to do a small drizzle across my hearts. And because I've got 9 here, I'm just going to go ahead and load up 3 of each with each of my colors. So this is where your imagination can run wild. You know, feel free to add sprinkles. If you really love chocolate, feel free to add more chocolate pieces. But the idea is to just make them your own. And then for an idea for gifting these, you can just get small cellophane bags, put a few in, tie them up with a nice bow, and then deliver them to your favorite people. And for me, I just want to share them with my Valentine's this Valentine's season. Yum. And that's it. Make them your own. Make them sweet, make them savory. It's up to you. It's a great recipe to use any time of the year, whenever you need a special treat. So it's that time to give them a sample. And I want to let my friend Angela make her pick.
I'm going to try the one with, well, I was going to go for this one.
This one right here?
Yeah, something with the jelly.
Okay.
I'm going to try the jelly.
All right, so again, we've got combinations with chocolate, with coconut, nuts, some with jelly.
Okay.
And Angela's going
All
to
right,
give a
here we
sample of our treat.
That's very good.
And so yours has a combination of chocolate, dark chocolate, and strawberry preserve.
Yeah. It's not a real smoky. It's just nice balance.
And
Really
remember,
good.
the more ingredients that you add that had that smoky essence, the stronger the flavor will be. You get to control that by the timing that you keep it in the smoker or expose it to the handheld food smoker. So there's our special Valentine treat, or that special treat you just want to gift to somebody. Make the cutouts any of your choosing. Fill them any way you want. Even think savory, because these are great with ground meats and cheeses and your herbs when you have those in season. So for now, this is our special Valentine's edition of our heart puffs with a smoky filling. We'll be bringing you another great recipe, for our special tradition in the month of February, which is Super Bowl, our NFL football series. We'll be bringing you our special avocado-based guacamole, and that'll be coming up next. So from now, it's Donna and Angela from Olean, New York, in America for Smokin'Licious. Hoping you have a great Valentine's Day.